Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
How's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scot McKay, at Scot McKay on every major social media platform with the exception of Instagram, where I'm at Real Scot McKay. Please visit mountaintoppodcast.com. Hey, guys, check it out. I'm increasing the number of goodies available for you at mountaintoppodcast.com pretty much on the daily. So go check it out. If you're not on the Facebook group yet, hey, more and more guys are joining. We're having a lot of fun. It's not your everyday men's group where we all kind of complain and give each other bad advice. No, this is more fun, more about masculinity, more about how good it is to be a guy. That's at the Mountaintop Summit, appropriately enough, at facebook.com. I got Derek Loudermilk on the phone with me today. Hey, Derek, how's it going, man?
Hey, Scott. Good to chat with you again.
Yeah, man. This is about your fourth or fifth time on the show. We met some time back in, I think, 2016, which is starting to feel like a long time ago, man.
Well, that was before I had kids, and now my kid is 7, my oldest. And it was so funny when you messaged me, I was just sitting down earlier that day. I had written, circle back with podcasts that I've been on already. And then your message came in for me to come back and talk to you again. I was like, yes, made it happen.
Man, all this metaphysical stuff, you know, and calling in things and Vulcan mind melds and everything. What do you know? It worked. Because I was thinking, man, I need to get that Derek Loudermilk back on my show. He's such a cool guy.
It's so much fun when this stuff works, because what happens is that you get luckier and luckier, and everything just kind of starts to go right for you when you're paying attention. It's amazing.
You know, it's interesting how many people only believe in that which they can see with their own eyes. And then they believe in a whole bunch of other stuff just because someone told them it's true. And kind of stuck in the middle is this whole area of that which is unseen, but which kind of like oxygen, we know to be real. Or, you know, we could know to be real if we just gave it a shot. And almost, well, I'm not going to say almost everybody, but so many people completely miss out on so much cool stuff in life because, well, we're closed-minded, right?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of unseen things, you have your thoughts and your beliefs, which everyone kind of does believe in, and those are pretty powerful. But the latest science would tell you that, and when you and I grew up, we sort of had this idea in the scientific community that our minds created our experience, our brains created our perceptions of the world. But the brain is actually more like a receiver for our mind, and it's consciousness itself that's creating the physical world. The Nobel Prize in physics 2 years ago basically proved that the universe is not locally real. That is, we are rendering it in real time as we go through our lives and perceive. So, for example, if there's a door that's closed, there's nothing behind it until you open it and create the reality behind the door, which just totally flips most of the science that I was trained in on its head. But it's really amazing to think about how the fundamental fabric of the universe is consciousness. And if you're from a religious background, it's like God's love is the fundamental fabric of the universe, which creates the reality that we experience.
Wow, so much for object permanence, right? That was supposed to be something we grew into at like age 7, right? That's a measure of intelligence, is object permanence. So what are the ramifications of everything you just said in the real world? Where does that leave us?
Well, we have these collective agreements about what the world is. So there is permanence because we have all of our consciousness together has sort of created the physical reality as it is. But here's a crazy example. So you've probably seen that flat Earth is gaining popularity on social media. More and more people are like, oh, the Earth is flat, which we thought that was a closed case. But if everyone came to believe the Earth was flat, then the Earth probably would be flat. And so what's going on is that you have these group of people that are flat earthers, and for them, the world is flat. And then you have everyone else who knows that the planet is a sphere. And for us, the Earth is a sphere. And they can actually both exist simultaneously and both be true at the same time. And in reality, what it really is probably most similar to is an infinite plane. Again, because we're rendering it in real time. So just think of like an infinite, moving in all directions plane that you can fill out like a Minecraft or something.
Well, my question is then, how come we all seem to have so much common reality between us? Or is it kind of like the solipsism theory, where we are all basically our own universe unto ourselves, manufacturing everything we see, including everybody else, on the fly, since we experience selfhood and our consciousness is locally residing within our own bodies? I mean, is that what we're getting at here? I mean, I guess the disconnect I have right now with everything you're talking about, Derek, is what's the difference between me just, constructing my own matrix, my own simulation as myself, versus a shared reality between human beings, all of whom are very, very real from a universal perspective. Because you're talking about this fluid reality whereby we as individuals kind of help craft this mutual perception of whatever's going on based on our selfhood. The mutual input of humanity shaping the reality that all of us share. So how does that come about? How do I fix this disconnect in my brain between that solipsistic theory and all of us kind of sharing together to create a mutual reality? How can that peacefully coexist?
Yeah, let's see if we can dissect this. And I'm not sure I know what solipsism means.
Well, solipsism is something that has been made famous, frankly, by the whole men going their own way movement to describe how they think women see the world. It's an extreme narcissism, whereas I am my own universe. The universe does revolve around me because the universe is me. It's probably something that could be classified as a dark triad disorder. Someone buys into it, really a lot. It's like narcissistic personality disorder on steroids. Like nobody else is even there, let alone do their feelings matter. Right?
Well, so there may be an element of truth in that idea because we are part of the universe. We're part of the whole. And we see ourselves as a discrete unit. You could call it a unit of consciousness. But
discrete, CRETE, right?
Yes, like we see a boundary around ourselves. Like I see myself as different than you. But that's really an illusion because we're all made of the same fundamental, again, the fabric. Like if you were to look at it from an atomic perspective, right, we're all made of Plancks and atoms and quarks and all those things. There's no boundary between me and the room I'm in. Everything is just the same material. If you want to look at it from God being everything, for example, the point of having humans is that each human can have their own journey, their own hero's journey, their own experience, their own storyline. And the benefit of that to God is that God or the universe learns through each person's set of experiences. Otherwise, if there was no way to learn or no way to gain experiences, then it would be actually a very boring universe. So having humans, for example, going through their lives here on Earth, the main point of it, as I see it from a sort of mechanics of the universe, is to have experiences, to learn, and then to be of service to other beings that are also learning and growing. And eventually, we progress higher and higher through evolution of our experiences until basically we reintegrate back into that sort of pure love source point.
So, listening to what you're saying, Derek, it occurs to me that the satisfaction we derive from community with other humans, or even with our pets or wildlife or nature for that matter, along with the satisfaction that we derive from actually bringing good to the world and helping other people, being there for other people. It's one of those things when, if you've been selfish your whole life and kind of kept yourself and you start giving to others, you realize, hey, you know what? I'm getting more out of this than everybody else I'm helping. That wouldn't make any sense in terms of the human experience apart from the truth behind what you just suggested. which is actually sort of ironic in its simplicity. All of a sudden, we've come back full circle to this point where, hey, you know what? We as humans are created. We're in this together and we have community, and that settles it. Regardless of how deep our discussions about it get or where it came from, it's really just an intellectual exercise, everything we're talking about, when it's actually very simple, isn't it? And easy for anybody to understand.
Yeah, there's this Hawaiian prayer practice called Ho'oponopono. Are you familiar with it?
I am.
And one of the guys who sort of brought it into the modern world, it's been around for centuries, but this guy, Dr. Hulen, he learned about Ho'oponopono from a kahuna, I think is the word. And he was a therapist, and he worked in a hospital for the criminally insane, if I'm getting the story right. And he didn't see any of the patients. His job was to work with the patients and try to rehab them. But he didn't actually, for several years, he didn't actually have any meetings with the patients. He just sat in his office and looked at their file and then tried to connect with their experience. You know, why were they criminals? You know, what was going on with them that had their life so messed up? And he would forgive himself. So the Hawaiian prayer is very simple. It's forgive me.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Forgive me. Thank you. I love you.
I'm sorry. Forgive me. Thank you. I love you.
Yes.
And he would go over and basically forgive himself for each aspect of these inmates' crimes, basically. And again, because of the way that we're connected, you could call it quantum entanglement, you know, however you want to talk about it. But after a few years, the hospital closed and everyone was rehabilitated, and there was nobody left that needed to be in this hospital for the criminally insane. And so he basically worked on himself. He cleaned everything up in himself that needed cleaning up in these people's lives, and it had these incredible dramatic results. Now, I do the same thing. Like, whatever I see in the world that I'm not happy with, whether it's a war going on or my own personal financial situation, there's some aspect in there that I can clean up for myself. You know, somewhere where I'm, like, if I see oppression, there's somewhere where I'm trying to oppress someone else, or I'm trying to control my kids, or something like that. So there's always a reflection that we can clean up within ourselves. And it has this mutual way of cleaning up how you perceive the world at the same time. It's remarkable.
That is remarkable. Now, there are a lot of guys out there saying, okay, I showed up to this podcast, McKay and Loudermilk, to get better with women. And so far, we've been having to kind of read in between the lines to draw conclusions that would help us in that part of our lives. I'm going to perhaps shed some light on how we can draw this all together by acknowledging, you know, with you on here as a guest, these guys already know I feel this way, how pandemic the whole Mr. Nice Guy problem is. And see, Mr. Nice Guy is not to be confused with Ho'oponopono. And that may be confusing to a lot of guys. Matter of fact, I'm learning as I talk, as I listen to you, frankly, as we talk all this out. Very recently, at the time that we're recording this show, I don't need to go into the details, but we said goodbye to a very dear relative of ours who died of cancer.
Mm.
And that involved a lot of us seeing each other for the first time in a long time. And when things become that serious, all the BS of life tends to go out the window, doesn't it? And basically, we all sat around Ho'oponoponoing each other for a couple days. You know, I should have been here. You know what? From now on, we need to start acting like a family. I sure loved, you know, our aunt, our mom, our sister who was passing. And I still do. And it was incredibly important for me to be here because I'm sick of only seeing each other at funerals after it's too late to say goodbye to this person. And, you know, that's real talk, man. That's what really matters. But it seems like we don't get to that level of authenticity till we get rid of all of the noise and all of those things that are commonly classified as urgent but unimportant. And we finally are confronted with something that isn't necessarily urgent, but has always been important, but suddenly becomes urgent. right? And so, hey, you know what? We clear the deck and we make time for it. At the time that we're recording this, also, I don't know if I certainly don't expect every guy to know this, but one of my dear friends and multiple time guest on this show, Dr. Mark Golston, who has always been an expert in grief and dying, actually passed not too long ago. It's very sad. He had a complication based on his ongoing cancer treatment and died of the infection. And it was amazing to me how towards the end of his life, a life well lived, by the way, he was very conscious of the meaning of death and dying, and even the personalization of it when he was looking at the imminence of his own mortality vis-a-vis, you know, having been there for other people in a similar time at their life. And it's just kindness and truth and authenticity that emanates. And that was his message is, hey, you know, get to what's real, get to know who you are and get to know other people and just see how you can be in alliance with each other rather than defiance, as so much of this world has bought into lately, the division, etc. And as that relates to women, I think a lot of times, Derek, especially nowadays, people really are selfish. That solipsism kind of creeps in, at least conceptually, where the world revolves around me. So what I need to do is I not only need to find a chick so I can get off sexually, I need her to do my bidding. And you're getting all these AI girlfriend apps. And it doesn't matter to the people who would use those apps, whether whatever it is on the other side actually genuinely loves you from its own volition and free will. It's just that I get what I want out of it. And I think that's a really dangerous state of humanity. And what I'd like for you to talk about, you know, if you have something to riff on here, is what I'm going to throw on the table, which is, hey, you know what? If we were a little more into getting in touch with our thoughts, with what's real, with this authenticity that you and I were talking about, even at this somewhat supernatural level that we're presenting, not only would we start having better relationships, more honest relationships with ourselves first, and then with our friends, then with our coworkers, with our family, like I just talked about, and also with women. Not only would that start happening, but we would be uniquely refreshing to those women we met, because where did this guy come from? We may have to actually fight their knee-jerk resistance to us being so, well, let me just throw it on the table, weird to them in this day and age by trying to be authentic and trying to be real and trying to meet them where they are as a human being. But in the long run, don't you think it would be revolutionary for a lot of these guys, especially if we've been kind of made a little bitter and hurt by some relationships that didn't go well, to do that Ho'oponopono thing, take a little gosh darn responsibility for ourselves rather than feeling like a victim. Because that's what Ho'oponopono is. It's anti-victimhood and love kind of mixed together to make this delicious cocktail. What do you think? Is there something to that?
There's a lot of ways I could go, but the first thing that's coming to my mind is my relationship with my wife, Heidi, has been getting better and better the whole time we've known each other, but it really had this leap a couple of years ago, I suppose, when I finally learned unconditional love. And you might think, oh, well, of course I love my partner or wife unconditionally. But there was actually, I realized, a lot of conditions. Like I wanted her to be a certain way, or I had my preferences, and I would either directly ask her to follow those preferences or try to, manipulate the situation so that she would do things more the way I wanted them to, which I think is probably natural for a lot of humans. But until I completely accepted her exactly how she was, I wasn't getting that unconditional love myself. And so we were both probably trying to get each other to be the person we wanted. But when we moved to this unconditional love and acceptance, then however you want to live your life is great. And it takes so much pressure off. And it's, if you remember the movie Avatar, they say, I see you, which is actually such a powerful thing to see exactly who someone really is in their core and then just accept them no matter what. And it's very freeing. You can choose to really be authentic to yourself, right? You can live your own truth. You can speak your own truth, because each person has their own set of values that they really need to be living in alignment with their values. So if you're not trying to manipulate or control or change someone, then they can just be perfectly aligned with, what they're here to do in this lifetime, and you are too. And actually just creates so much more connection and love, and it gives each person the opportunity to be authentic as they move through their days.
I think that's fantastic. And I'm reminded how in many ways the opposite of love is fear. So when you stop fearing your partner, your girlfriend, yourself, right? That's when true love can come in, right? But on the other side of the coin, when there's that vacuum of love, it gets filled up with fear-based thoughts and beliefs. And I see so many couples break up. I see so many families get angry with each other and start fussing and not talking to each other and being alienated or even estranged from each other because of all that fear. And when you start removing fear, the love can come back.
There's something really interesting that occurred to me. David Hawkins' work with emotions and their level of consciousness, but he started his research in addiction. And with alcohol, one thing it does, it's a depressant, right? But one thing it does is it depresses fear, it depresses anxiety and things like that for some time, and it allows joy and wonder and happiness sometimes to rise to the surface. And there's actually a very great benefit to people that are addicted because they have a moment to depress their lower, heavy emotional experiences, right? But once you have enough self-awareness to not let your thoughts go into fear or anxiety or shame or any of those things, then you start having where most of your daily experiences are already in a realm of contentment, peace, optimism, enthusiasm, joy, any of these emotions that, let's just call them, they're higher on the scale, right? They're more beautiful emotions to experience.
Yeah, kind of evolved emotions, right? Yeah, I couldn't help but be reminded of how so many men claim they need some liquid courage to go meet women at a bar or a club or something like that. How do we actually get the liquid courage without the liquid? How do we get there?
Yeah, and one of the most important skills for anyone to master is their attention. That is, there's so many things that are trying to get our attention these days. And so if you allow the world to pull your attention towards whatever, your emotions will follow. So if you read the news, right, that most of the stories are going to be fear-based and negative. And if you place your attention on those things, then you're likely to have a negative emotional experience. Meditation, right, teaches the practice of focus and attention. That's why it's so beneficial for people. But wherever you're focusing, wherever your attention is, that's going to be reflected in your own inner experience. So that's a meta skill, is this attention and focus and awareness that just by chance unlocks superhuman abilities on the other side. But the basic thing that I've had to master and is going to be useful for anyone is to just really understand where your attention is in every moment. And if it's in a place that's not beneficial for you, one of my mentors calls when you stick your finger in the electrical socket, right? If you get too caught up in celebrity gossip or war news or pandemic reporting or whatever it is, that's like taking you out of your peaceful place, then you've allowed yourself to get thrown off course. You've stuck your finger in the socket. So you need to always be able to bring your attention back to a beneficial point of focus.
I wonder if this mass control that we all were subject to during COVID, where we were fed only social media and, media in general, apart from actual connection with other human beings for a couple of years. I wonder what the actual positive correlation is between that state of affairs and what I've perceived to be just appalling lack of self-awareness on people's parts. I mean, this is anecdotal. This is something I've seen personally. I have no peer-reviewed scientific study on people's self-awareness or anything, but I also know that when I bring this up with other people, they kind of tend to nod and agree with me. You're right. All these people out on the street who you don't even know how they got their license because they're driving so poorly, cutting each other off and pulling in front of people. Or when you're out in public, someone will just walk in front of you and stand there and not realize they're holding up you and everybody behind them. And then they'll go, kind of wander off, and you just get used to this after a while. It's far more common than it used to be. Another example would be you're out in public and someone starts walking backwards, not realizing everybody's having to get out of their way because they don't realize anybody's behind them. That had happened maybe 5 times in my entire life. And up until I guess very recently, it might be getting a little bit better now, but it seemed like that was happening a lot. And it seems like all this is related, and you're already laughing,
Epidemic of walking backwards.
Yes, the epidemic of lack of self-awareness, because we've all been distracted from what we really believe and from standing up for purpose.
Well,
it's like the outward representation of something inner.
I get that that's happening in the world, but it's not necessarily people's fault, because there are systems and people and organizations with specific agendas. Let's say they have, every organization and person has their own agendas, and some of them are control agendas and power agendas. And those players that use control and power agendas, they're going to use all the tools that they have available to maintain control and power. And so as we, move through the centuries, it used to be, let's say, witch trials, for example. And now there's other tools. There's social media. There's, all this stuff is well researched to be distracting to people.
A 24-hour news cycle. I mean, there's no such thing as a test pattern at 1 a.m. on your TV anymore. I remember 15 years ago when children's cartoons were on at 2 a.m. and I was appalled.
Mm-hmm.
How last century is that, right?
But so you have to put in enough effort to rise above the things that are meant to keep you in a very narrow band of experience, right? For the people that want to control you, they want you in a box. They want you to be a good factory worker. They want you to not really think outside the box about infinite possibilities and take control of your life and all of these things. So that's part of the problem. Then you see the people that there's a stark contrast to the people that have gotten outside of the box and they can perceive everything and they don't get entangled with it, right? It's like, people that want to control other people, they're just going to do that. And I mean, we still have to accept that that's their choice, but we don't need to get involved with that ourselves.
In terms of our relationships with women, or lack thereof as men, it seems like more and more guys are reading mainstream advice and studies on how horrible women are, how much they don't want us as men. I have guys out there who don't even believe women like sex or even ever get horny. All these things that are objectively false and the opposite premise objectively evident to so many people. It all starts with them wanting to defend their bitterness, to find an excuse for their lack of success and support for their victimhood, right? And because of the echo chambers you can find so easily online, you can find lots of people you agree with. And the next thing you know, when you have 100 or so people who agree with you, it becomes universal truth because after all, we all can't be wrong. But it's still, relative to humanity, a very small sample size. And a great example is guys will come to me and go, well, all these women on online dating sites, they check all the boxes where they want a guy who makes over $200,000 a year and he's got to be 6 feet tall and this, that, and the other. And I'm none of those things. So women aren't going to like me. And that's objectively provable because it says here in this report that 100% of women out there check these boxes or whatever. But then you look at the real world, Derek, and you see beautiful, sweet, wonderful, kind-hearted women, which, by the way, these guys have also convinced themselves don't exist, right? Aside there is they've led. When you are going with a fear-based mentality where you're trying to get something without giving anything in return to women, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out. And I could say that till I'm blue in the face, but when these guys have a bunch of other people feeding them the information in the style that they want it to be fed to them, it's easy for them to keep disagreeing with me. But you objectively go out into this real world we keep speaking of here, and you see women who are fantastic and wonderful with guys who aren't what the check boxes apparently were dictating they should have been. I'm raising my hand. But try to tell these people this. Try to convince them to go out there and say, hey, why don't you let women make their own minds whether or not they're going to reject you before you buy in to this groupthink mentality. And man after man after man who comes to me, who I encourage to get off of their fear-based mentality and just give it a try. If they can jump out of that airplane and trust pulling the ripcord just a couple times, they come back with that real sense of what's important, what matters. The whole Ho'oponopono thing, relative to real talk, right? And really getting down to what's important. They go, man, not only does this work, not only was woman after woman responsive to me, but it's easier. It feels better. And darn it, I'm becoming less bitter and I'm becoming more happy. I'm becoming more content. I'm becoming more satisfied. It's like something that was broken is fixing itself. But the key is, Derek, you got to look into, and I'm going to bring it full circle here, something that you can't see right now that might actually be real, right? Mm. See, I can get as deep as you can, brother.
I'm reminded of the fact that kids don't come here. We don't come here with any particular belief structures. Everything we come to believe is programmed into us. We learn it from somewhere, communities, our friends, family, whatever it is. And so you really need to hold your beliefs very lightly and be willing to drop them if they're not serving you. And this can be pretty challenging because we tie our identities up with our beliefs. And there's a practice that I've been working on actually, which is, a lot of people start with getting rid of their negative beliefs, their things that the dark sides of themselves and things like that. The even more challenging part is to be willing to get rid of your stories that have served you well. Like the things you tell yourself about yourself, I'm a good friend, or I'm a nice person, or I'm good at math or smart, or, whatever it is that's helped you throughout your life. You got to be willing to let all those stories go as well, because whatever is true about who you are, it will rise to the surface. And if you're good at math, then you'll always be good at math. You don't need a story about it. But being willing to just let everything go, it feels kind of like a death experience. When you get rid of your personal history, then you're free to take any action that you need to. You're free to go out and have phenomenal relationships with women, regardless of any previous experience. You're free to go change the world or start a business or a movement or whatever it may be, just because you have this set of beliefs or stories about what you're capable of. As soon as you drop those, you're capable of infinite possibilities.
Yeah, you're talking about being born a clean slate, each one of us as humans. And, as we get older, we become, quote unquote, set in our ways, don't we? So if we're coming off a divorce or a long-term relationship and we're in our 40s and we're trying to date again, my goodness, Derek, it's hard for us to rearrange the kitchen vis-a-vis a new chick moving in with us, let alone rearranging our entire life and our entire mindset and giving up the stories that have indeed served us well. But I sense that everything you're talking about isn't only powerful, isn't only doable, but it's well worth it. And I think this has been a fantastic conversation. And whatever these guys get from it, I hope and trust it's transformative for them in their journeys, not only within themselves, but with others and especially with women. Derek Loudermilk, where do we send these guys nowadays? What is the best website to send them to? And then I'll just redirect mountaintoppodcast.com/Derek to that, DEREK. What's up with you lately, man?
Yeah, DerekLoudermilk.com, and everything sort of branches out from there.
Beautiful. Well, man, once again, it seems like we not only have wonderful conversations and unique conversations, which after almost 400 episodes is always a welcome thing, but it seems like they get deeper and more meaningful every time we talk. So thank you so much for dropping by today and having this chat with me. I really appreciate it and appreciate you.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah. Always good to chat with you.
All right. And gentlemen, be sure to go over to the website where I not only have a free download of my book, Sticking Points Solved, but you can grab your copy of Yes and, which, speaking of evolutions, is the evolved way nowadays of talking to women and, to be completely forthright with you, being more of the kind of guy we're talking about here today. More self-awareness, more care towards someone else, more giving to get, starting with your simple conversational style. And gentlemen, I've turned yes and into a habit in my daily life, not only with women I talk to, not only here in Casa McKay with my own wife and kids, but with just about everybody. And life is better for it. So that's integrally related to what we've been talking about in this very episode. Go ahead and check out Yes And. You can click on the link at mountaintoppodcast.com and get your copy. Also, gentlemen, if you're not getting in on the master classes, every month, we basically break down a major segment of how to get better as a man, how to get better with a woman, throw all the guns on the table and the ammo and cover it with a big heavy hammer. Guys who are in on that love it, and they come back month after month. All of that and more is there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com. While you're there, check out Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine. Also, the guys at Hero Soap. Hey, guys. That unbelievable body wash is back over at Hero Soap. If you've never taken a shower with a member of the other gender while using that stuff, hey, you're missing out on one of life's great experiences. That's for real. Also, the guys at the Keyport, new attachments, new faceplates all the time. It's the 21st century everyday carry device, and I carry mine indeed every day. When you check out any of our sponsors, also use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 at all three of them to get an extra 10% off. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.